Hello and welcome to another crafty love letter. This is Gurngar and we're in a different place. We're in my house in Animal Crossing. Today's build will be based on my house and how to make a gyroid farm because I'm so excited. The release is finally out. Well, except I did make a little bit of a mistake. It actually released like 2 days ago. You actually get to see the part of the video later where I realized that, and I was a little worried about releasing it, but you know what? I made it. So you get to watch it, and to be honest, I'm actually pretty happy about what I built, so please enjoy. So the first thing that we need to do is make a base, and you know what's cuter than a square? A circle. This time I actually did math, so you can see that everything is graphed out, and I am sad to say that math actually makes everything look better, so I will also be doing math in the future. After you've traced out the circle shape, it is time to cut it out. I tried to do a cool transition here, but I forgot that's what I was doing, so don't worry, I remember the second half right here. Boom! Anyways, make this circle a little bit smaller because I made it way too big. And then now that it's cut out, we need to shape it a little bit to give our hill a little bit more of a realistic look. The goal was to make the hilltop about 11 inches because I did 1 square in Animal Crossing to 1 inch in real life. Shout out to the tool I'm using right now. It is the real MVP of my life. If you don't have a desk vacuum, get one. So now, thanks to all my math and planning, I have a cool little template that I can just trace over to put the lines into the foam, which then looks like that. And then once I'm there, I need to put together the cobblestones. I first just etched little tiny rainbows everywhere before going in and adding a very individual brick. I then made sure to add the little stars to show the dig spots of where we bury the gyroids. Last step of prepping the foam is cutting out some holes because I want to add lights later to illuminate the house. When cutting this out, I made sure to leave a little bit of a lip. That way the house would still have somewhere to glue onto. Then the foam gets a thick layer of brown Mod Podge. And now we can start the house. For the house, I just cut out the walls before cutting out the doors and windows. I then added spackle to create a nice texture for later. I find the finger technique is the best for a rough look. And here they are all done and shaped and ready for the roof. And then while my walls are drying, I decided to make a simplified door that kind of looks like a weird finger. Instead of building it up with different layers of wood like it is in the game, I just decided to emboss the designs with my tools. And then after it was all done and cut out, I took it away to Mod Podge. Let's start putting the house together. I just used tacky glue to put all of the walls together. The thing in the middle is a way that I thought I could add a 90-degree angle, but I'm gonna be honest, it just was in my way, so I got rid of it. And here are the walls all together. I then needed to decide on how I wanted to put the wood parts on the outside of the house, which was just a lot of placing, measuring, and cutting over and over again. However, during this time, I also decided I needed to add another window. So I went ahead and drew that out and did some wonderful math, aka I used a ruler, until I got to this point. For now, the roof is just kind of bones, so I glued it on there with tacky glue and pinned it on so it would stay straight. The other details will be added later. Before adding the wood that we cut out earlier, I wanted to make sure to add the aqua base paint. I wasn't too concerned about making it too neat because I knew that I wanted it to have kind of a rough stucco-ish finish. While the house dries, it's tree time. Instead of doing the normal like metal bones with air dry clay over the top, I decided to use a paper towel roll. So I just cut down the paper towel roll down to size and then, you know what? Added air dry clay to it. And then when I was happy with the size, I added some texture so it would look less like that and more like a tree. Speaking of tree parts, I need to add some roots on the bottom, so I just kind of stubbed some nubs on there. And once it kind of looks like a rocket, you know that you're done. To finish up the rocket, I need some brown Mod Podge to hide that terrible, terrible clay. Before putting the tree aside for now, let's make a mistake. I decided to try to make the tree topper with some clay and just shoving it into the foliage, and it didn't work. But what did work was pinning on this foundation. I went ahead and just used some cardboard to make my line even-ish. I'm going to put a like white line of wood over it, so don't worry too much that it isn't the straightest. I also put a little bit of wood around the bottom to beef it up a bit. Up until this point, I was trying to convince myself that I just wanted to make a simple house. However, I kept staring at my house in Animal Crossing and decided I really need to beef up this roof a little bit more. So I went ahead and cut out some triangles to make the roof a little bit more fancy. Get it? Because I used a Fancy Feats box to make it? And here's his little friend for the other side. The roof bones need one last addition, so I went ahead and cut out a rectangle to make the chimney. Our wood friends from earlier got some white paint, and then I cut out some more friends and attached them all on. And before you start thinking that I had a perfect plan this build, I forgot to dry brush the lighter blue parts before adding on the wood. Thankfully, I didn't end up messing up the white paint too much. Let's go ahead and make the roof by first making a bunch of white lines. And then off screen, I went ahead and made them into scallops. I think there's about 30 or so total. I also angled the edges a little bit. I then just glued the foam in lines. I didn't care that it went over the edge because I was just going to cut it later. To ensure that the ends would be straight though, I went ahead and cut out some cardboard and glued them along the edge. You can see the finished roof as I'm doing this. It looks a little bit messy, but I promise it does work. For all of the holes that are in the roof, I went ahead and added some spackle. This also added a nice texture in places that needed it. While the roof dries, it's time to return to the trees. I just went ahead and painted it a light brown before going in and adding the circles with a darker brown. I wasn't happy with the contrast difference, so I tried to add some darker brown circles, but then I also decided I hated that, so I decided to restart. This time I went ahead and added the circles with a Posca marker instead, and I think that the contrast ended up a lot cuter in the end. Remember how I made failure tree balls before? Well, this time I just used aluminum foil and covered it in hot glue and then put the foliage on top of that, and it worked out so well. Just remember to smush it down as you go to keep that distinct ball shape. Time to paint the cobblestones, so I first just laid down a darker gray base and then textured it by dabbing a fan brush around. Once that dried, I added a little bit of a lighter gray to show contrast between the grout and the stone. Then to add flavor, I went ahead and added some lighter gray stones throughout the whole thing. And then I went through and added some darker gray stones. Then to tie everything together, I added my patented way too much black wash and patted it away with a towel. The final cobblestone step was to add a white dry brushing to really tie everything together. Now it's time to go ahead and make the white picket fences that I'm so excited for. To do this, I just went ahead and put down some masking tape and then put coffee stirring sticks on top of it. Then I added wood glue to secure it and then the post that runs along it. Off camera, I then cut it down to size once it dried. Now it's time to make the shovel so we can properly plant our gyroids. I first cut off the end of a toothpick because I decided it was the perfect handle before making the shovel part out of foam, putting the rest of the toothpick inside of it, cutting it down to size, and then that's it. Now we need a place to dig with that shovel, so I went ahead and colored in the stars from earlier with a darker brown. Now that the picket fences are all dry and cut, it is time to paint them a cute white. While I was painting these, I was watching someone stream Animal Crossing, and it is at this moment I realized that the update dropped, but I had to finish what I started. So, painfully knowing that I could currently get the white fences in-game, I continued my painting. Time to make the shovel. I went ahead and just painted it all green before adding in some yellow details, and then I just went ahead and glued in the handle finally. The final yard detail for now is the mailbox. So to do this, I just scored the cardboard lightly so that I would be able to fold it. And then once I made that square, I went ahead and glued it together. And then I gave it a little hat. Time to finally return to the roof and paint it up. So after I put down a black Mod Podge base, I went over it with a dark gray blue Here's the startling difference of when it's all dry. I then wanted to make sure that my shading looked a little bit cartoonish, so I just went in with the darker gray along the edges of each of these little shingles. Same thing with the highlights. I wanted to match the in-game graphics a little bit, so I just added a light gray along the edges of each of the shingles. And then you can see how the roof turned out finished in the background. And now before we add all of the little fun details, it is time to add the grass. So I first just put a thin layer of Mod Podge over the whole entire base. And then in my Fever Animal Crossing update brain, I forgot to film putting the grass on, but I just basically sprinkled it on all over. To finish up the ground, we need to do the dirt. Normally I would just use dirt for this, but I didn't think ahead and it has been raining forever. So instead I decided to add some texture with some spackle, and then I would go back later and paint it different shades of brown. Let's go ahead and finish off these windows. As you can see, I added some toothpicks inside of it, but I'd like to add some curtains. To do that, I just cut a strip of patterned tissue paper and then I accordion folded it. That way when I glued it up there, it would give it a nice like little curtain feel. I just used tacky glue and I smushed it on there. And here you can see the finished product with the curtains in all of the windows. Here are those dirt spots painted in the 2 different Animal Crossing dirt colors. And now we can start putting everything in where it belongs. First, I went ahead and I secured the house. Then I glued in the tree. Next up is the mailbox. I want to show you the completed project with the little flag attached. Then the shovel, the fences, and then it's time to add the flowers. These were just pre-purchased flowers from the hobby store. Now we're almost finished, but we're missing one important thing, the gyroids, which I'll of course be making out of polymer clay. The first friend that I'm going to make is the fracture that you find in the ground. So to create this, I'm just going to take a circle, add a half sphere onto it, and then it will make a little cute bowler hat. Then I need to make the body and I want it to be hollow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a strip of clay, make it into a cylinder shape, and then I'm actually going to take aluminum foil and put it on the inside, and that way when it bakes, it will hold its shape. Next up, I am making the arms, and then I'm adding the little facial features. I'm going to actually cut it into like the fracture shape after it's been baked. Next up is the little clown friend. So to a little circle, I'm going to add this cone for a hat. I'm then going to cut out the like hair arm things before adding the base collar. All of the gyroids sit on like a secondary base, so that is what I'm cutting out right now. And then after I put it all together, it's time to add the nose and the other facial features. The next one up is the like squeezoid, I believe it's called. For this one, you are just going to make a like cylindrical shape, cut off the bottom to make sure it is nice and straight. While you're making the shape, make sure you like squeeze in the body a little bit so you can give it a nice defining feature. And then I cut out the base like I did with the other one before adding the face. Now let's go ahead and cut out some arms. And then cut out the weird hair pieces. If you want this to be a little bit more consistent, what you should do is bake the hair pieces first so they're nice and hard, and then you can shove them into the gyroid and then rebake the whole entire thing. I really like the look of this when it just has the like 2 little antennas. It looks like a little alien friend. But alas, we must add all the little hairs. Last little friend that I'm going to make is this little ghost one. So the first thing I do is make a little pill shape again and cut off the bottom before rolling it out a little bit and then creating that same base like I did earlier. This time though, I need to make like the little ghost fabric filling on the bottom. So I'm going to use my tool to cut in these divots. Then I'm going to add the face the same way I did with the other ones, before adding the arms by making this little banana. And then I'm all done with the gyroid friends. The last little clay thing to make are the peaches for our tree. So I'm just going to make circles before giving them a little butt on the bottom. And here are all of our friends all baked up and ready to be painted. Before I start the painting process, I again need to cut the fracture into an actual fracture. I then wanted to go ahead and paint the white ones a whiter white instead of the like light beige that the clay bakes at. I then went in and added the paint to the fracture to make it a kind of like orangey brown. The clown then got a nice light beige base coat, and then because it was similar to the peach color, I decided to also paint those. This isn't really a painting technique, I just thought it'd be fun, and I guess it adds some texture. And then the green hair of the squeezoid friend can get painted. Before I add all of the black eyes and mouths to all of our friends, I found this weirdly satisfying, and I don't know if I should be worried or not, but I like it. Now our clown friend can get a little orange nose before giving Squeezy some red hair. And then we return to our ghost friend to add the pink along their arms. And then to add the pink along their eyes. Time for our little clown friend's hair. Before adding the blue also to the squeezoid. This blue dripped everywhere and was a big pain, but this blue was great. And needs to be added to our ghost friend's eye and also to their arm. And their cute little nose. Next up is the clown's red collar. And Squeezy's orange hair. And because everyone has pretty much enough color, some purple for Squeezy too. Then the final step is just finishing off the yellow bottoms on the peaches, which when fully dry can be glued onto the trees with some hot glue. Then we can add the fragment into our garden. The gyroids, I kind of debated where I wanted to put all of them, but ultimately I decided that the ghost friend could go on the other side of the yard. And then no Animal Crossing build is complete without a little Marshall toy that I have. Before calling this completely finished, I did want to add lights to everything here. There you can see the garden lantern lit, but I need to also light the inside of the house. And to do this, I just took apart some Pusheen lights that I have that do not work very well. I just hot glued it there on the bottom before shoving all of the different lights on the inside. I also used 3M to make sure that the battery compartment could stay in there securely. And then as you can see, I fought with it to turn it on and we're all done. And with these final shots of the project, it is time to say goodbye. Thank you for watching. Please ignore Marshall as he keeps on falling. I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.